as far as common grant applications go, this conversation comes up every few years. There's now two major task forces that are going to be looking at it again. And at the end of the day, the issue is that each large private foundation feels that they are a unique snowflake and they have their own very individualized, unique needs. And so when you start creating a common grant application, you start putting more and more into it to cover all the bases and all of the needs that every foundation thinks they need. And then you end up with this 10-page thing where you're asking every applicant for their organizational chart and their list of board members in the last 5 years of audited financials and so on and so forth. But I think that instead of thinking about a common grant application, we have to think more radically and maybe not so radical, but instead of a common grant application that every foundation can sort of accept the same set of questions and documentation, could we simply just accept proposals that are written for other foundations? So if you go through that process with the Ford Foundation, can you just send that same packet of information to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation? We could accept that and find a way for it to go into our system in a seamless way that doesn't create, duplicate work. And then, more radical than that is the idea that Gori brought up of how do we just get away from having organizations having to sort of justify their lives and pitch their work to us, and then we sit up on our perch and make decisions while all of these groups that are doing great work are sort of pitted in competition with each other. What are ways that funders and people with the wealth can more easily see all the good work that's happening in different communities and be able to allocate the funding in an equitable way without creating any of this kind of burden on applicants to begin with?
What would cause a tipping point to like truly change the funding landscape, the funding dynamic? This is like kind of the core of the thing that I was trying to search for. I was trying to find like an incentive that like funders cared about, right? Because there has to be like some push on I think from the funder side, some incentive that's so great for them to change the dynamic. And the trouble that I ran into was that because it's a philanthropic marketplace, there weren't true incentives for the people giving out grants to make that process, and I mean, this is an oversimplification, to make that process more efficient or more effective, right? Like on the for-profit investment side, when investors give out money, if they choose a successful company, then they kind of reap the rewards. And so there's like this feedback cycle for that. On the nonprofit side, what I found was that one, it's so hard to measure impact still, right? It's like, and that feedback cycle can be like very long. And then two, if a funder funds a nonprofit doing like A+ impact work versus B+ impact work, what does that actually impact the grant making process or anybody's job at those foundations or at those funders? So that's still an open question. I would like love to see from a funder's perspective, like what truly could be the incentive, the problem that the funder would be trying to solve that could be aligned with this kind of positive change that we're talking about.
I think if you've got a great dynamic, innovative idea and you're looking for funding on a national funder, I would suggest that possibly, and I should be corrected on this, but if you're going to Robert Wood Johnson Foundation or Kellogg Foundation or the Gates Foundation, they probably fund 1% to 3% of the proposals that come in because they have so many great ideas coming at them. If you go to a regional funder that you've identified locally, you probably have a 30 to 50% chance of getting funded. Not as much money, but you can build a relationship that's got ongoing funding. So I think another side of the technology is to be aware of when you can identify with the new softwares that are out there, who are funders, getting to know what are their interests and building that relationship that's appropriate and matching it with your cause will shift it. So that tipping point for a common application then does happen. That during COVID, I can tell you that I've been meeting regularly with a lot of regional funders. We actually came up with a common app that we said we would never do and did it through COVID with common questions for a 3-day turnaround to get funds back out into the community. And because our obligation is truly to the local community, we're able to do that because I also am reading what some of the great large national funders are doing to deal with some of the more national systemic issues that have to go on differently. So that tipping point is different if you're regionally looking at regional funders and fundraising, or if your service area is more regional, or if you're doing more of a national type work, or you're trying to get into more innovative national think tank type work. So again, I think the tipping point is there, but it will be different. So know your own audience, what you're trying to do, and then really that matching and building a relationship is important.
As far as the common grant application, remember I started out in Michigan many years ago, and at that time, the Michigan Council on Foundations did have a common grant application, and it made life easy for grant writers to get information from their clients or employers and fill them out. When I came to Arizona 25 years ago, our foundations here also had a common grant application. It looked so easy. It was 3 pages of, answers, and you couldn't exceed 3 pages on the responses, but there were over 20 attachments requested with those 3 pages. And it became cumbersome to start together all those attachments, and it delayed the grant submittal process. And often nothing was ever submitted because they didn't have all 25 documents where they could put their finger on them or send me a copy of them. So I see things getting easier in a way because I love using instrumental and doing this search process that takes less than a day, and it used to take me 30 to 45 days to qualify funders, many other streams. It's still the grant writing process that is sluggish. And I don't know if a common grant application is really the answer. At the regional level, I agree with Meg. Yes, it is appropriate. It is easy because you can access money without jumping a lot of barriers or challenges or having 25 attachments. But on the national level, because of the type and the quality of grants that are being awarded from these major foundations, I think that they should stay within the realm of asking all the questions and scrutinizing the applicant, because the monies on the table are much larger. The interest in having research and programs that give accountability and the kind of feedback that shows that there is an ROI for the foundation making the grant, those are still very critical because they're not eyeballing the grant seeker every day in the local community or once a month at a meeting. They don't see them at all other than perhaps a video call. And so they're trusting the paper to tell the story.